Proposition 26 allows in-person roulette, dice games, sports wagering on tribal lands. This is an initiative constitutional amendment and statute. So this was submitted by persons in California, or at least signed by enough citizens in California. It would both change the Constitution and change California law. So what's this all about? And I'm sure you guys haven't seen enough commercials. A yes vote would allow racetracks to offer in-person sports betting, and they would pay taxes on the bets. It would also, the other change would be the tribal casinos could offer in-person sports betting, roulette, and other games played with dice, such as craps. The tribes would be required to support the regulatory costs at the casinos themselves regulating gambling, and people and entities would be able to file civil lawsuits for violations of certain gambling laws. So it creates a new way of sort of regulating gambling. A no vote would simply mean that sports betting would continue to be illegal in California. Tribal casinos would continue to be unable to offer roulette and other games played with rice, and it wouldn't create any additional means by which people and entities could file civil lawsuits for violations of certain gambling laws. So, what would it do? Again, it would permit in-person betting at licensed racetracks on some sporting events like football, horse racing, obviously, and boxing. It wouldn't permit it on everything. For example, it wouldn't permit betting on high school games and athletics or college sports. Also, only individuals 21 years older or older would be permitted to bet. And it would create a California state wagering fund that would collect 10% of the profits on bets made at the California racetracks. I'm just going to refer to the California Wagering Fund as the fund past this point. The tribes that want to provide gaming on their lands would have to negotiate an agreement, or it's called a compact actually. So if you hear the word compact, you'll know what it means. An agreement with the state on how to regulate gambling. The tribes would not be required to pay into the fund, but would be required to pay for the cost of regulating sports betting at the casinos. It would also create a new gaming enforcement rule that would allow private individuals and agencies to file a civil lawsuit if they believe gambling laws are being violated. And the way the proposition is written, there would be a maximum $10,000 fine for each violation. After regulatory costs are paid, let me move that out of the way. After regulatory costs are paid, the remaining money would be spent as follows. 15% would be spent on gambling addiction and mental health grants, 15% on gambling enforcement costs, and then 70% would go into the general fund. Here's the argument in favor of Proposition 26. Gaming on tribal lands has helped address poverty, improve education, healthcare, housing, public safety, cultural preservation, and many things in California. Proposition 26 essentially continues the legacy of support by authorizing in-person sports wagering at highly regulated casinos for individuals 21 years and older. It requires in-sports wagering because that provides the strongest age verification standards to prevent underage gambling and also to provide protections against problem gambling. The argument against Proposition 26 is that Proposition 26 amounts to a massive expansion of gambling in California that will legalize sports betting. Opponents argue that 5 wealthy tribal casinos sponsored the proposition to expand their monopoly over gambling in California by putting card clubs out of business and by giving people the ability to sue for violations of the law. They argue that it does not adequately prevent underage voting, and that really it's designed also, on top of everything else, to save the horse racing industry by expanding sports betting at racetracks around California, despite concerns about the treatment of animals at those horse tracks. So, a yes vote would allow racetracks to offer in-person sports betting, but they would have to, but the racetracks would have to pay taxes on some of those bets. Tribal casinos could offer in-person sports betting, roulette, and other games played with dice, for example, craps. Tribes would be required to support the regulatory costs at the casinos, although they wouldn't have to pay into the newly created fund. And it would also create this ability for people and entities to be able to file civil suits if they think there are violations of certain gambling laws. A no vote would basically mean that sports betting would continue to be illegal in California. Tribal casinos would continue to be unable to offer roulette or other games played with dice, and it wouldn't create this additional means by which people or entities could file civil lawsuits for violations of certain gambling laws. In this one, I think it's kind of interesting. As far as Proposition 26 goes, the California Republican Party recommends a no vote. The California Democratic Party says it's neutral on it. The Chamber of Commerce and the Labor Federation didn't take a position on it, but both the Los Angeles Times, which typically has a more liberal leaning, and the Los Angeles Daily News, which typically has a more conservative leaning, both recommend a no vote on Proposition 26.